Morning girls, welcome back to your science class. As you know, we started the solar system and now we are talking about the inner planets. We have four inner planets. We have Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars, which are the four inner planets. We took a look at Mercury, its atmosphere, um, its surface, and now we are going to be talking about Venus. If you look at it, Earth and Venus, they almost have a similar size. Here you can see they almost have a similar size than the rest of the planets, so that's one of the reasons why Venus and Earth are also called the twin planets. So let's take a look at Venus. Venus is so similar in size and mass to Earth that it is sometimes called Earth's twin. Right? This is one of the reasons why we call it the Earth's twin. Venus's density and inner structure are similar to Earth's. This is one similarity between Venus and Earth. That density and the internal structure of the two planets is almost similar, but obviously there are other differences as well. Venus has a thick atmosphere, an unusual pattern of rotation, and the hottest surface of any planet. Now, because it has a thick atmosphere, that's one of the reasons why it's really hot. We are going to take a look at the different reasons of why it's extremely hot in the next slide. First, let's take a look at the atmosphere of Venus. Venus's atmosphere is thick and cloudy, so it's covered with very, very thick clouds. These thick clouds are made mostly of droplets of sulfuric acid. So as that actually tells you that the surface of Venus, the atmosphere of Venus is acidic, because the clouds which cover the planet are mostly droplets of sulfuric acid, which is obviously acidic in nature. Then the difference between the atmosphere of Earth and Venus, one big difference is that the atmosphere of Venus is actually mostly made of carbon dioxide. So as you know, we have already studied about Earth and its atmospheres and the different layers of the atmosphere. So it's a mixture of different gases. But here in Venus, the atmosphere is basically mostly composed of carbon dioxide. Now, if we take a look at the rotation of Venus, Venus takes about 7.5 Earth months to revolve around the Sun. It takes about 8 months for Venus to rotate once on its axis. So this is in comparison to Earth. How does it happen? Now, one interesting fact about Venus is actually the rotation of Venus. Venus actually rotates from east to west, which is basically in opposition to many other planets and moons which rotate from west to east. But Venus's rotation is different from the rest of the planets. Now, if we look at why Venus is extremely hot, it's like I told you that it's covered with thick clouds, and most of the clouds are carbon dioxide. So that's one of the reasons why it is extremely hot. The carbon dioxide in Venus's atmosphere traps heat so well that Venus has the hottest surface of any planet. So this carbon dioxide, actually the one which is covering the whole planet, traps all of this heat inside of the planet, which actually makes it really, really hot. If you kind of remember the word greenhouse effect that we talked about when we were studying the surface of the Earth, when we were talking about what happens on the planet, the layers of the atmosphere of the Earth, that there is something called greenhouse effect, which is directly related to the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. So one of the factors which actually makes Venus the hottest planet is the abundance of carbon dioxide in its atmosphere, and the phenomena and the idea that carbon dioxide basically traps energy inside of the planet. This trapping of the heat by the atmosphere is called the greenhouse effect, which we can also observe on Earth, right? So after we are done with this, I would like you to answer this question, which is compare and contrast one feature that Venus has in common with Earth and one feature which is different. I already told you the similarity and the difference, just write it down in your book. Moving on, looking at the greenhouse effect. This is the greenhouse effect of Venus, the surface of Venus. Now, as you can see, it's all orange, and the radiating heat colors are also orange. The reason being that it's extremely hot. Now, what happens over here is, as you know, that the sun, its energy is radiated. It radiates heat, and the radiations are absorbed, right? So when the solar radiation is absorbed, some of it is reflected and some of it is absorbed by the planet. Now, since Venus is actually covered in clouds of carbon dioxide, what happens is that very less amount of this radiation escapes out, but most of it is absorbed inside of the planet. So that's what makes it really hot. While if you look at Earth, what happens in Earth? We have the solar radiation. Obviously, the radiation comes in from the sun. What happens to this radiation is that, yes, some of it is absorbed by the planet. This is like the absorbed amount. But compared to Venus, you can see that most of it is actually reflected back into the atmosphere. So this heat is actually, in contrast to Venus, you can see that most of it is actually absorbed and some of it is released. Some of it actually escapes, but it's the opposite to Earth. In Earth, just a little portion is actually absorbed and most of it escapes. All of this actually escapes. That is why the Earth's temperature is not as high as Venus. But as you know, that there are different factors which are contributing towards the greenhouse effect on Earth and the global warming and all of these factors that add on to the natural amount of carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere. We are obviously having the temperatures are rising in on the planet Earth, on the surface of the Earth. But that's the additional carbon dioxide produced because of human activities. But naturally, the Earth's natural process has its atmosphere and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in a controlled amount, which allows most of it to escape into the atmosphere, the heat to escape into the atmosphere, and only the required amount to be absorbed into the atmosphere. Then, if you take a look at this is the greenhouse effect on Earth. First step, the solar radiation reaches the Earth's atmosphere. Some of this is reflected back into the space. The second step is the rest of the sun's energy is absorbed by the land and the oceans, heating the Earth, which is definitely the heat that we require to live on the planet. Heat radiates from Earth towards the space, which you can see it's going out. Some of this heat is trapped by greenhouses in the atmosphere, keeping the Earth warm enough to sustain life. This is what we're talking about, the natural procedure of trapping the heat energy into the atmosphere. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels, agriculture, and land clearing are increasing the amount of greenhouse gases released in the atmosphere, and this is trapping extra heat and causing the Earth's temperature to rise. Now, these two parts are because of the human activities, but until part number 4, this is the natural process of heating up, which Allah has actually given to the planet, because of which the life is possible on planet Earth. This is all the way naturally Allah has produced the planet, and He has given this enough energy and enough amount of heat to the planet to survive. But obviously our activities are adding on to it and making it hotter day by day. Then if we talk about Earth, what exactly is Earth, the planet where we live? What does its surface look like? What does the atmosphere look like? Let's take a closer look to it. Now, Earth has liquid water and a suitable temperature range and the atmosphere for living things to survive, which we already know because we are living in this planet. It's also called a water planet, which is very obvious why it is called a water planet, because it has water in it. So most of Earth's surface, about 70%, is covered with water. If you look at the temperatures of Earth, it's moderate, it's not very hot and not very cold. If Earth was a little closer to the sun, it would be really hot, and if it's going to be really hot, what will happen? That all the liquids are going to evaporate from its surface. And if it's going to be a bit farther from the sun, then what will happen? The water will actually freeze and it will turn into ice. So the position of the Earth is perfect for providing survival of organisms. It's neither too cold nor too hot, it's not very close to the sun, and it's not very far from the sun. Then if we look at the atmosphere of the Earth, we have already taken a look at the different layers of Earth in the previous lessons in details. So here we will not go into the details, but we're just going to have a look at the composition of the Earth's atmosphere. Earth is the only planet with an atmosphere that is rich in oxygen. Oxygen makes up about 20% of Earth's atmosphere, which we already know, and the rest are the smaller amounts of other gases. The rest of it is nitrogen, with small amounts of other gases such as argon, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. As I told you before, that just like Venus, Earth also experiences a greenhouse effect, which we took a look at in detail, which is basically a similarity between Earth and Venus. Earth's atmosphere traps heat, though less heat than Venus's atmosphere does, and without the atmosphere, the Earth would be much colder. So if we wouldn't have this natural greenhouse effect, the Earth is going to be much colder than what it is now. So that is basically about the surface of the Earth. Now we talked about that these different planets are actually very dense, right? So density is that how heavy they are from the inside. So these are different layers of Earth. So you can see there is a crust, there is a mantle, there is an outer core, and there is an inner core. We are not going to take a look at the layers in details, but the main idea is to see that the Earth is most dense in its center. Here, inside, in the center, it is dense, most dense inside the center of it. So this is about this whole lesson from Venus and Earth. So inshallah, next class we are going to do the next planet, which is Mars. So have a nice day, enjoy the rest of your evening, and stay safe.